Welcome back to our next study on who is Jesus. I don't know about you, or how you feel about the dentist, but I suspect that very few of us get up in the morning and are thinking, at last, finally, something I've been looking forward to, going to the dentist for my checkup. The dentist has these sharp little, the little pick, and it's going to sink in every now and then and show you that you might have a cavity or something wrong in your mouth. But it's better to know about something that's rotten now instead of when it's too late to do anything about it. So this session, this study, is going to be a little bit like going to the dentist. Listening to what Jesus has to say about us can be extremely uncomfortable because, like the dentist pick, it finds and exposes what we're really like. But it's better to find out the truth about ourselves while we still have time to do something about it. There are aspects of Jesus' teaching that are difficult for us to hear, but these are things that we need to know. And Jesus wants us to know them because He and He alone can deal with them. Now, we've already explored who is Jesus, and in this session, we're going to focus on another vital question. Why did Jesus come? How would you answer that one? If you were asked that question, why did Jesus come? Did He want to bring peace on earth? Was it to heal disease and the suffering of the world? Did He want to transform society? Or just maybe give us an example of how to live? Now, there's actually an element to truth to every one of those options. But Mark says that's not the main reason that Jesus came. Jesus came to cure a problem we all have, and that is a heart problem. Now, when we look at the natural world around us, there's a lot to marvel at. And we talked about that a little bit the first week. But see, when we take our eyes off the beauty of creation, when we start to look around, things aren't so beautiful anymore, are they? Because can we honestly say that the world is good? Estimates vary, but history estimates that there are about 2,400 violent deaths every single day. We see death, we see violence, we see chaos, anger all over the news these days. We all have a sense that something is wrong in the world. So the question is, why is the world like this? Jesus tells us the uncomfortable truth in Mark's gospel. He says the reason the world is not the way it's supposed to be is because we are not the way we're supposed to be. I want you to imagine for a moment that your entire life was recorded on a DVD, okay? Everything that you've ever done in your life, in public and in private. And also, this DVD included your thoughts. So everything on this DVD in high definition, Dolby Digital sound to view. I'm sure there'd be parts of this video that you'd be proud of, right? Special achievements, success at work and family. Maybe you've helped others. Maybe you've given away money to the poor and needy. But there's also thousands of things that you don't want anyone to see. Things that you've done, things that you've thought. Now imagine for a second how you feel if this DVD was going to go live streamed. It's going to go on Netflix for anyone to view it. Now, for myself, if my life was on display for everyone to see, I'd be so ashamed. I wouldn't be able to look people in the eye. I mean, think about it. Could you, if we're being honest? If all the moments of your life and thoughts were out there for everyone to see? So the question is, when we think about our lives and everything we've done and thought, why are we like this? Why is there so much to be ashamed of? Jesus gives us the answer in Mark chapter 7, verses 20 through 23. And it says this. And he said, what comes out of a person is what defiles him. For from within, out of the heart of man, come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, foolishness. All these things, evil things, come from within, and they defile a person. What Jesus said is startling, right? It's like being shown an x-ray of our hearts. Not an x-ray that shows bone, but one that shows who we are and what we're actually like inside. Now, you might feel angry about the things Jesus says here, or maybe you don't agree with it. It's not how usually people talk about wrongdoing either. We're used to people like saying stuff in public life, calling the wrong things we've done like a mistake. I didn't mean to do that. It gives this impression that their stealing or their lying or their adultery wasn't intentional. It was just something that came upon them. You see what Jesus is saying here? He's saying that's nonsense. Sin is not something that I come across out there in the world and unintentionally get caught up in. It's something I discover inside here, in our hearts, and I can see it on the x-ray. We have to look within and take responsibility for what we see inside. And Jesus tells us that it's sin, rebellion against God, and choosing to go our own way rather than His. And it comes from inside of us. And see how Jesus includes all of us. He doesn't just mention immorality, theft, murder, and adultery, but He also mentions greed, envy, slander, arrogance, folly. These are things we all fall into. Some sins may not make the front page headlines, right? Like murder. But see, even the little ones, all are evil in God's sight. And they come in from inside you and me. If we could see that DVD of our lives, we'd see very clearly that we have a heart problem. We often treat others in the world in a shameful way, but see, our problems don't end there with how we treat one another or think about one another. Because we treat God in the same way too. In Mark chapter 12, Jesus tells us how we should relate to God. It says in Mark 12, verse 30, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. So he's saying, listen, if you don't have a heart problem, if you're not a sinner, then you will look back on your life and see that you have done all these things. You have loved God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, all your strength. If you're not a sinful person, then there wouldn't have been a single moment when your life didn't joyfully center around God and His glory. But I see in my life, honestly, it's hard to find even 10 consecutive minutes where I have treated God with the love and honor that is rightfully His. We all have the same heart problem. Everyone. And we should love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength because He's our loving Creator. But we never manage to do this. Instead, we have rebelled against God. We choose to live our lives our own way rather than His way. We give our hearts to lots of things in this world, but not to our Creator. And listen, the Bible calls this sin. So, why did Jesus come? Mark's gospel tells us that Jesus came to cure our heart problem, the problem of our sin. That's why He came. In chapter 2, if we turn back, Mark tells us what happens when Jesus has dinner with a tax collector named Levi. okay, who worked for the Romans. He would have been seen by the Jewish people as a traitor, a sinner, by the religious elites, the Pharisees. Okay? So we get to this, and people are asking, why is Jesus having a meal with the scum, the sinners of society? And we see it in Mark chapter 2, verse 15 through 17. And as he reclined at table in his house, many tax collectors and sinners were reclining with Jesus and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. And the scribes of the Pharisees, when they saw that he was eating with sinners and tax collectors, says to his disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?" And when Jesus heard it, he said to them, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I came not to call the righteous, but sinners." So there's two groups of people in this passage here. The good guys and the bad guys, if you will. Okay? The good guys are the senior religious figures of the day. So the teachers of the law, which were called the Pharisees. They looked on the outside like they had it all together. The religious elites. Okay? And then we have the bad guys in this scenario that are made up of the people like Levi, the tax collector, and his friends. And the question is, who would you expect Jesus to want to spend time with, right? The religious types can't believe that Jesus has chosen to have a meal with tax collectors and all of his buddies. Surely he should be with us, the religious, not the rebels. But listen again to what Jesus says in verse 17. This is not a coincidence or a mistake. This is absolutely intentional. He says, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." So Jesus is at Levi's house on business, and his business is to be the doctor for the spiritually sick. He hasn't come for those who think they are spiritually fit, but for those who know they are spiritual wrecks. He says, if you think you're good, if you think you're spiritually healthy, then you won't think you need him. Just as healthy people don't need doctors, so people who think that they don't need Jesus, and they're good. The qualification, see, for coming to Jesus is not being good enough, but realizing that you are bad enough. Jesus came for people who knew that they had a heart problem and know they need him to cure it. And listen, we all have this heart problem. We are all sick. We are all sinners. Therefore, we all need Jesus. Listen, if the dentist were to diagnose my problem, right, and explains it in gruesome detail, the treatment for it, right, and what it's going to take, I might thank him politely and make a run for it because I don't want to endure this pain and hear it. I might choose to ignore the problem unless I understand the consequences if it's left to decay. So it's important that I understand what will happen if I don't take the dentist warning seriously. Now listen, the same is true for us now in a much more serious way. We need to understand why our heart problem matters so much and what the consequences are if we don't do anything about it. And that brings us to one of the most disturbing passages in Mark's Gospel, where we discover what Jesus says about the seriousness of sin. That's in Mark chapter 9, verses 43 through 47. Jesus says this, "And if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life crippled than with 2 hands to go to hell, to the unquenchable fire. And if your foot causes you to sin, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life lame than with 2 feet to be thrown into hell. And if your eye causes you to sin, tear it out. It is better for you to enter the kingdom of God with one eye than with 2 eyes to be thrown into hell, where their worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. This is a scary warning. I mean, you got to think, why is Jesus using such extreme language here? Why is he being so shocking? Because he knows that if we reject God throughout our lives, then ultimately God will be right to reject us. If our sin, you see, isn't dealt with, it will take us to hell. And Jesus lovingly warns us about hell because he doesn't want us to go there. In this age, many people either dismiss hell as a myth or treat it as a joke. They joke about how much they'd rather be in hell than heaven because that's where all their friends will be and it'll be much more fun. But I'm here to tell you, and what the Bible says, hell is no fun. There is no friendship. Hell means being totally separated from God's mercy and blessing and completely cut off from all the goodness God brings. Because he is all goodness. God is the source of love, joy, friendship, kindness, peace, and the list goes on. And in hell there is none of these. Nothing good is there. It is absent of God. Hell is a place where we face God's judgment for our rebellion against him. So you can see why Jesus is warning us about hell, and he's using such strong language to do it. Because he knows what it's like, and he doesn't want us to go there. And I can tell you as a pastor or anyone who conducts a funeral knows that people want to hear lots about heaven. But I don't have any integrity unless I also talk about hell. Hell is the consequence of sin. And we've already seen that we all have this heart problem, right? We all sin. That means we are all in danger. Every single person, whether we realize it or not. And that's why Jesus came, to rescue us, to cure our heart problem, and rescue us from the consequences of sin. Now, I might like my dentist if he tells me my teeth are fine and I can go on eating lots of chocolate, right? But if he knows that's not the truth, he's not being friendly. See, my dentist isn't being cruel when he tells me I have a rotten cavity and then it needs to be fixed and it's going to take some surgery. He doesn't say it to ruin my day or because he enjoys inflicting pain upon me. He's actually being kind, a good doctor. He's warning me about the problem while there's still time to do something about it. And I can choose to listen to him or to take no notice. But if I do ignore him, to know that there are going to be consequences. Now listen, Jesus doesn't warn us about hell because he's being cruel. He doesn't say it to ruin our day, nor do I talk about it to ruin anyone's day. But he lovingly warns us about hell because he doesn't want us to go there. He knows the consequences of our heart problem, and he loves us so much that he came to save us from those, to rescue us from our sin. If you understand this, then you're starting to see why Mark says that Jesus is such good news. You see? He didn't come to call the righteous, but sinners. And so the question we're left with, at least at the end of this session, is are we going to listen to Jesus while there is still time to do something about the problem? That's something to think about as you go away from this session. Next week, we're going to look at the cross. This is the place where all of our sin will be dealt with. Until next time, have a great day.